Day 3 of the June 98 7-day retreat in Springwater. The birds calling, motor rumbling, breathing. Someone asked, you talk so much about the sounds, the birds, the listening. What about the visual, the seeing? I'm more of a visual person. In talking about listening, and not just talking about it, in listening, it doesn't just refer to the ears. In talking about seeing or looking, it doesn't refer just to the eyes. In talking about touching something, contacting, it doesn't just refer to that sense of touching. When we talk about listening, or when there is listening, all the senses are open and together as one. One perception, one seeing, one listening, whether when some people who come here are very hard of hearing, some people are hard of seeing. It doesn't matter. Maybe I talk more about the birds because I've got my eyes open. I'm not looking at anything at this moment. But it doesn't mean the eyes are truly closed when the lids are down. This openness of being is an openness of the senses, but not just the senses. This openness transcends the senses. With which I come to another question. Someone saying, in listening to your talk, not so much to the words, but this energy that manifests. There came the realization that stillness is not just the quietness of the mind. It's not just the absence of thoughts. But stillness is an immense energy without any boundaries. Why don't you talk about that? Was the question. Or maybe you don't talk about that. Or why? I don't remember. And the first response was, it's only day 2. But then I thought about it some more. And maybe something that is so close, that is the source of oneself, the ground of speaking, is hard to name. Let it speak for itself. This tremendous energy of presence, of being here, open and in touch. And a few other people asked. So interesting how these questions often come in clusters. We're so much together in this. Does this stillness or energy, whatever you may call it, manifest everywhere? Or is it accessible everywhere the way it is accessible here in Springwater or at other places where this kind of work is going on? And it may not just be a theoretical question, because one yearns to access it wherever one is. Because one realizes in this there is no division, peace, harmony. I don't mean hallmark words. Sometimes it's understood this way, and then people get a little nauseous. So, is it everywhere? This is the question for all of us, isn't it? Can it be accessed everywhere, or is it in special spots which humankind has cultivated over the millennia, special spots, hallowed spots, to contact energy beyond the nitty-gritty of our daily life and relationships and involvement, trials and tribulations. Well, is this question alive as one gets involved in conflict, in contradiction, in argument, in self-enclosure, comparison, you name it? Is that question alive right at that moment, or does one wake up to it again? Where is this energy now? Where is this stillness? Is it here? Or is there such a tremendous drive to go on with the habit of trying to win, trying to be right, trying to whatever, to gain, to suffer? All these currents of habit, which are at times called the smog, hiding what is there all the time. I remember once flying to Boston. That's what is in memory. And seeing in the distance some pinkish gray cloud. And then we were above it and then in through it. And then there was Boston. It was not visible from the airplane. It was hidden by the smog. And because we live so much in smog of our daily lives, not just suffering from it, but attached to it. Somebody said this earlier, I don't want to let go of it. This is my existence. And it was not a rational decision. It was an experience, how one holds on to the stuff. In the smog, there is just that. What is it? That's why we spend so much time taking a closer look at the smog. Because this is what we live in most of the time. And wondering, what is it? Not just, I would like to have back what I had in Springwater. That adds to the smog. That's thought, that's thinking. And wanting, and not attending right now to what's here, right in front of one's eyes, right underfoot. So, can this question catch fire again, when we're in the midst of it, of what we hold on to, what we want to continue with, what we don't want to give up. Feeling the power of the currents of habit, to go with the pleasure, to go with the pain, to go with the competitive striving, to see it freshly, in a new light. Is that possible? Right in the midst of it. Often it happens afterwards, but we're asking, is it possible to see it while right in the midst of it? And stop for a moment. Because unless we really want to see and hear something true, we go on. Such a tremendous drive and power and energy to the smoggy habits or smog-creating habits. So at this moment of involvement in the habitual, needing to be right, needing to right the wrong, needing to get this thing or protect oneself, is this silence, this energy, this peaceful presence, is it there? Is it someplace? And to stop for a moment and to see whether it's possible to stop. The habitual language says, well, I have a choice. I could either stop, I could either go on. But is it that I have a choice? We're trying to find out what this I is, which creates all the smog. So how is it at this moment of feeling the current to go on with the habit of pleasuring or paining or hurting? Is it possible to stop for a moment and not needing to go on in spite of the tremendous push, tremendous pull? Because there's something that is not of this pushing and pulling, that just sheds light. People tell me about these situations, so difficult to control or give up, and yet something was aware of it. The person this morning mentioned, what was it? No matter how still it is, how present, there's still this observer. And with that observer, the distance, the division. Me here observing that, there. May not even that pronounced. And the question that came up was, what is watching this observer? What is aware of this observer? Because as the person said, there was not much thought activity in the mind. And yet there was something awareing the division between observer and whatever was experienced. Quietness, darkness. So it's there. It's so close, so present, and yet so overlooked. Not taken seriously, because we're so involved in what it is we see, what it is we hear, what it is we say, or what it is that somebody else has just said. And neglecting this awareing, which goes on anyways, whether there's a neglect or not, whether there's involvement with the stuff or not. There is presence. That's all there is. Future and past are just thought connections. Smog is thinking and emoting and tensing and stressing. Amazingly agile organism to respond instantly to the slightest inkling of a thought. One thought and already fear manifests. Another thought, anger shows up. It doesn't take more than one thought, but it doesn't stay with one thought giving birth to another line, and another line, and another line. And so the fear and the anger are maintained, carried. Connections are strengthened for this to happen again. Let us look this morning at fear, because this is one of the most frequently mentioned things in our life. Fear, anger, hurt, pain. But we'll look at fear. And just like what was said earlier about the senses, all working as one, not really divided. Looking completely at fear is the same as looking completely at anger or hurt or pain. What unites it all is the complete looking or listening, being with it all. Even though the language suggests that there is a being that is with it all. No, being is the whole thing. That's being. Hurting, paining, fearing, angering. So, people say, there's so much fear, or fear comes up, or there's fear all the time, or I'm never free of pain, of fear. It's true, neither am I. In that conditioned state in which we live so much of the time, we're so programmed, so it has been pounded into us through tradition, through teachings, through the way parents were brought up and bring us up. To be afraid. And what we do to each other. The callousness, the inadvertence of hurting each other, of warring with each other. The little wars and the big wars. The pain that is suffered and the fear of this repeating itself inundates all humankind. And then the little fears of doing something wrong, having done something wrong. Fear of something going wrong, going out of whack. This incredibly delicate organism. Which we say is ours. It's not ours, it's just alive. Comes into this world and lives and dies. So delicate, so fragile. Cannot help thinking right now, and I have to put it out right at this moment, a dear friend who coordinates the California retreats. It's Tom Hegestad. He's being operated on for a brain tumor. Huge team of surgeons there. It's a 12-hour operation going on right now. A young man so full of energy, so full of creativity and love. How perishable we are. As long as we don't think about it, we may not be afraid of that the moment we think about it, or those close to us have difficulties, have sicknesses, diseases. Then a thought of that can set the fear mode into action. It goes with this existence. It goes with this existence which imagines itself to be separate. The last words I said to Tom over the phone before coming to retreat, I can't say you'll be all right because you are all right. And there was in-tuneness in this. So, most of the time, the way this thinking brain is programmed, we think we're leading a separate existence, having to struggle for ourselves, maintain ourselves, fight for ourselves, protect ourselves. And we do it all the time by habit, and yet we're still afraid. No matter how protected we may be, how much we may create around us. The cocoon just grows in thickness, but it's still a cocoon. The fear only ceases the moment there is a stepping out of the cocoon, which is poor language. It isn't like that. There is no cocoon. There is no separation. There is no need to struggle for oneself, or against others, or for the common good, or against the common evil. Those take place anyways. And for that time of no time, there is no fear. Fear doesn't exist in this freedom from this conditioned network of thinking separately, and separately about myself, and dreaming up this world. So, coming back to fear, how to deal with it, because this is what we want to learn, to deal with this fear. As it arises, a thought has triggered it, and here it is, and it feels mighty unpleasant. Have we felt it? I remember for a long time not really feeling it. It was there, lurking, but it wasn't completely felt because there was an ingrained assumption that it shouldn't be felt. One shouldn't feel painful things, should stay away from them, guard against them, encapsule oneself from them, which is actually an organismic response. The body encapsulates toxic bodies that come in. There's a lot of encapsulation physiologically and psychologically, capsuling off two painful experiences, so they are inaccessible by the network. Almost inaccessible, because they're accessible enough to linger and to fester. So, there's this deep-lying assumption that I can't touch this fear. It can't be touched. And we're questioning that right now. Questioning the resistance that comes up very automatically when something is unpleasant. The resistance to be in touch with it. Don't we know that? Resistance to be in touch with unpleasant things in this body and outside of this body. And yet, very often we're in close proximity to unpleasant situations. Does it help to resist? Let's leave the outside situations alone for the time being and go back to the fear that is felt. Pain in the stomach, in the heart, intestines, in the muscles. Nauseous feeling in the stomach, whatever. Feel it. Right now I'm labeling it because we're communicating with each other, but for oneself one needn't label. One just touches the whole thing, which is an entirely new event. Not to resist, not to brace against. Not to know it. And to drop the assumption that it is something dangerous, bad, to be avoided. Touch it. Let it, or put it differently, whichever is most suitable for your own innermost feelings. Let it unfold, flower. Krishnamurti always used to say, let it flower. Let the jealousy flower, he would say. Somebody dialoguing with him said, how can you let jealousy flower? Jealousy is something bad. Or like a jewel, that was what was said then. Look at it like at a jewel. Well, we'll drop the many metaphors and come back to the immediacy of fear stirring, or pain, or anger, or hurt. Feel it so completely that there is not an hairbreadth of separation. No separation. No one who has it. No one who suffers it. No one who did it to me. It's just something that's there, wanting to unfold and defold. Because that's what every event and feeling and situation does. It comes into being, unfolds, and then it defolds and withers away, unless it is kept up with fuel, the fuel of thought, storyline, etc. So, are we ready to do this? Will we remember it? Because the habit is so strong to push something aside. And I don't mean to make a big deal out of it either. It isn't a big deal. Something comes up and is immediately allowed to be there, to be felt, to have the space it needs to move with it if it wants to move. Let it tell what it needs to tell. And the airplane is there too. The birds are singing. The breath is flowing, maybe haltingly, sometimes in really quietly being with something. There's hardly any breath. And then maybe a deep one, because the organism needs its oxygen. In the therapeutic situation, not that I am an expert about it, an expert on it, there's a lot of tendency or encouragement to express the fear, to express the anger. And there may be a lot of merit to this in its own limited way. But there is also another way of being with anger or fear or hurt. And that has nothing to do with expressing it overtly. This is not the only way of dealing with it, in quotation marks. I don't know whether I've ever related. We were still at the camp on Lake Canandaigua, doing our retreats there, renting the place. And a man who used to come to retreats at the Zen Center, hadn't been coming for a long time, came to see me ahead of the retreat and said, I would like to come to this retreat, I've signed up for it, but I want to settle something with you, or at least ask you a question. Is it all right for me to express anger? Because there's a tremendous need to express anger, particularly at you. And I don't know what moved me that I said, yes, it's all right, you can come. I was so happy to see him again. And he came and he sat, and sure enough, one time he came into a meeting, and you could see he didn't have to explain it. He was bristling with anger. He was telling me about it. And what came out was the question, have you ever looked at it directly? And he sat down and we were quiet for at least 10 minutes, it seemed. Meetings were longer then. Sat there. My heart was pounding a little bit more than usual. But there was this beautiful just sitting together, and then he broke out into laughter and he said, it doesn't have to be expressed. Because now you can say, where in my daily life when I get angry do I have a room with 2 mats and somebody else to sit with me while I look at my anger? Okay, one can say this. Why is one saying it? It doesn't have to be expressed, is what this man, who actually was a therapist himself, found out to his great amazement and joy. Which doesn't mean ignoring it. It doesn't mean denying it, or controlling it, or suppressing it, or swallowing it. None of that. A simple, undivided presence. Because ultimately, what causes all of our anger and pain and hurt is this division, which is our fundamental disease. And here, no division. And the end of the disease at this moment of no division. Where did the fear go? Where did the anger slip into? It's not there when we don't feel divided from ourselves and from each other. With which I'm not advocating that there's no place for expressing anger. Often it's not, it just bursts out. I wanted something to go this way and it's gone that way. And the energy of going this way, which was my way of going, this energy is now blocked, it's frustrated. And where does it go? It usually explodes. For some people more than for others. So it has happened. The explosion has happened. What now? And the innocent question is, can it drop? Can it be dropped? The explosion here, the explosion there. Is it possible to drop it? Or is it carried around, the memory of it, which hooks in, we talked about it yesterday in a meeting, somebody saying beautifully how this hooks into this and the past, all these tiers of past happenings of hurt, all become energized and mobilized with this present hurt. And still the question stands, can it drop? And I'm not saying this as advice or recommendation, any kind of a dictum. I'm just speaking from experience. Yes, it does drop. For some reason, the more the body-mind is here with what's going on right now, the less is it busy with going over what happened. And the less what happened is gone over, the less it sticks in the mind. They're very weak connections. And they atrophy if they're not constantly re-established or gone over. That's why past hurts are more sticky. They've already been gone over so many times. But new ones don't need to thicken. I'm just saying it from experience. Not that one never will get angry again. When we do. This is an energy affair. But how quickly does one notice it? How quickly does one realize how hurtful it is? Hurtful to others or scary, unpleasant to be with? People who are exploding at each other, very unpleasant situation for those who are not in the mood for this kind of thing. So how quickly can it be seen and x-rayed, irradiated with attention, so it doesn't become a festering boil, harming or making impossible our relationship with each other? It's for each one of us to ask and to examine. There's a lot of facets to this. Can't go into all the facets. They're also individually different for each person. But I think it's important. We're trying to go into this last night. I don't know whether we really cleared it up. It's not enough to say, well, okay, everybody gets angry, that's human nature. But to become more aware of what anger does to other people. Anger expressed, the intensity. And I can't say, well, that's for them to work on. I can't work on it for them. So I can only work here. And can there be a deepening of understanding of this whole complex affair of anger explosions? Also by hearing what other people say. Not dismissing it, taking it seriously, weighing it, allowing it just to be heard. Something sort of makes it all coherent and understandable. So, again, this twofold thing. When fear arises or anger, what is it? And no separation in the touching, in the wondering, in the listening, looking. And then it all happens in empty space, in empty listening awareness space, which is full of energy. We've said it now on day 3. Too marvelous to describe. We will end here for today.